Okay, Renee gave me the thumbs up on all of our social media platforms. If you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, welcome. Today is Thursday, don't get confused. From now on, our lives will be Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. Same time, just different day and same place. So welcome. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a few words. This week we've got tons of new followers. Our family is growing here at Abundant Marriage, and it makes me so incredibly excited because it means that we as a community want things to be different in our marriage. We want things to be better. We want to go from mediocre to abundant. And so for those who are just joining, maybe this is the first time that you've ever entered into a live. Maybe you were scrolling through your social media and you just stumbled upon this page. Or maybe a friend or a family member sent you the alert, the hey, get on this live. And so right now, this is the moment for you to share. Wherever you are, start sharing the link to make sure that your family, your friends, your loved ones, that they are participating with us. As always, send your questions, send your comments. I want to interact with you guys. I want to make sure that you are getting what you need to make sure that you are having an abundant marriage. And so Renee's the guy behind the camera there, and he's going to tell me and signal me if you guys make a comment. And as always, if I don't get to it tonight, I make videos depending on what you guys want to hear, what is going to be beneficial for you. So keep sending me your questions. You'll stay anonymous, but it's important that maybe you have a question that someone is afraid to ask. All of us are constantly learning. Look, I do this thing every single day, and there are still times that Renee says, hey, you should have this figured out by now. You tell everyone else to do it, you should do it. So we're constantly learning, okay? So welcome once again. If it's your first time here, my name is Amanda, and my passion, my love, my purpose is to help marriages go from mediocre to abundant. Mediocre marriages are the kind of marriages that are just lukewarm, that you guys are living much like roommates. There's no fire anymore in your relationships. Intimacy, I mean, what is that? Whether it's physical intimacy or emotional intimacy, those things are down the drain. And you live day to day just like a checklist. Not because you want to be there, but because you have to be there. But the abundant marriage, this is the marriage where there is stability, there's consistency, there's camaraderie, there's friendship, there is agape love, there is the kind of love that we see in the love chapter of the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13. This is the kind of marriage that God wants us to have. And as Christians, as believers, it is our responsibility to make sure, to ensure that our marriage is a little piece of heaven here on earth. So today we're going into part 3. Renee says, how long is this thing? This is the last part of are you vulnerable to an affair? Remember, there are 3 factors that make you more vulnerable. We've already discussed social factors. We've already discussed relational or marital factors. And tonight, right now, we are going to figure out what are the individual factors that make you and I more vulnerable to an affair. As always, grab your paper, your pens. I want to give you guys information so that you guys can apply it. The Bible says that we should not only be hearers of the truth, but we should be doers of the truth. So whatever you learn here tonight, apply it into your marriage. And of course, I want to make sure you guys are getting tools and things that you can apply today. And so in the end of our live, I'm going to send you another little quiz that you can do on your own so that no one here, no one tonight will have any blind spots in their marriage when it comes to affairs. So look, I've been telling you this in part 1, part 2, and I'm going to repeat it in part 3. These things don't give you an excuse to cheat. Okay? It doesn't mean that, oh my goodness, Amanda, I've found out that I'm vulnerable in the individual factors or in the social factors, and now that's it. I'm just going to roll over. I'm bound to cheat. No. There are people who have similar vulnerabilities that you have that haven't necessarily cheated or never will cheat, which is why we are doing some preventative work. But don't worry, if cheating has already taken place in your relationship, I'm going to be covering that very soon as well. Remember, the goal here is not to, which is a myth that people have, we can't really affair-proof our marriage, right? I was recently talking to a couple, cheating took place, and the husband sort of wanted guarantees that his wife was not going to cheat anymore. There's no way to affair-proof your marriage, but what you can do is that you can affair-proof yourself. These part 1, 2, and 3 is all about what you are doing, your personal responsibility. We cannot focus on what anyone else is going to do or is not going to do. The focus is on us tonight. The focus is on you, making sure that you are someone of integrity, making sure that you are someone that will not cheat on your spouse. Okay? So as always, Dr. Shirley Glass is someone that we are going to use whenever we talk affair because she is the godmother of affairs. The first thing in this sort of category of individual vulnerability, I want you to think of personal beliefs. I truly believe that you are what you believe that you are, that people are what you believe that they are. Think about it like this. If you believe in monogamy, honesty, commitment, loyalty, then you are going to behave in such a way. What you believe will become a part of your character and who you are. And the same is also true. If you think, oh, it's not a big deal, oh, everyone does it. Now, I'm not saying this is every place in Brazil, okay? But specifically where I'm from in Brazil, there is a lot of cheating that goes on. And it's almost like it's okay for the males to do it and not the females to do it. So this is a belief that is in this culture where it's almost like okay, where it's looked over. We know what's going on, but no one really talks about it. At times, the wife even knows the lover, right? And sometimes they actually interact pretty well. So, what you believe absolutely matters. Now, part of your beliefs, depending on what you have, if you have been the spouse who has been unfaithful, there are two kind of categories that you fall into. Either you will justify or you will make an excuse. When someone makes an excuse, it means that they've done something wrong and they need an excuse, such as, oh, I was just drunk. A few years ago, I was working with a couple, and the wife had gone to a business trip. Husband stayed home. He got a little too drunk, and he ended up cheating on her. Now, husband excused himself as, oh, it didn't mean anything. I just got drunk. It's not a big deal. Okay, we also see the excuse going on in the Bible. Remember Adam and Eve? Go to Genesis 3. Look at what happens. Look at the excuse. Look at the pushing off of responsibility. And why does it matter? Remember last week when I said that if you do not take responsibility for your good behaviors and also your bad behaviors, it makes it more difficult for you to restore your relationship. Your beliefs matter. Look at what Genesis says. We're going to pick it up in verse 11. This is after Adam and Eve, they sinned, they disobeyed. God told them that they could eat of any tree of the garden. God gave them a bajillion yeses to one no. Hey, God, can I eat of this tree? Yes, Adam. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, the corn? Yeah. And how about the apple tree? Absolutely. The grapes? You can eat every tree you see. Except that tree. Don't eat that tree. Well, you know the story, and if you don't, go read it in Genesis. You know there that Satan disguised himself as a serpent, and he gave to Eve of the forbidden fruit. She ate, and then she offered it to Adam. Now, although God had not changed, Adam and Eve changed. And you and I both know that sin separates us from God. Not because God separates himself, but we separate ourselves from God. Remember, God's love for you is unconditional. There is nothing that you have done, that you are doing, or that you will do that makes you unlovable to our Heavenly Father. And so what happens when God finally finds them in the garden, he says, what are you guys doing? What are you playing hide and seek? Who are you guys hiding from? And he starts to ask them, hey, what happened? Look in verse 11. And he said, him being God, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat? Then the man said, the woman whom you gave to me, she gave me of the tree and I ate. What is this? An excuse. Look at this. He pushed off responsibility. So God turns to the woman now, to Eve, and says, well, Eve, and look at what Eve says. And the Lord God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. So Adam blames Eve. Eve blames the serpent. Ultimately, who's the guy to blame? God, because God created the serpent, right? So Adam and Eve, they excused themselves by something that they did wrong with. It wasn't me, it was them. It wasn't my fault. It was ultimately what they were saying, hey God, it's your fault. Okay? So there's the excuse. And then there's those who justify their actions. And this is a dangerous one. So the justifications that one husband recently shared with me is he had this belief that he entered marriage very selfishly. Like, what can I get out of this marriage? What can I get out of this contract? It was almost like a business kind of affair. And the problem with this belief is that if you feel like you are not getting, then you justify when you step out of your marriage. And, oh, she wasn't doing this, and she wasn't doing that, and she wasn't doing this and that. He justified his actions the entire time. And here's the thing. I wrote it down here because I didn't want to forget. Look at this. If he believed that his marriage was supposed to meet his needs, and he was faithful as long as his needs were being met. But the second that his needs weren't being met, he justified himself from stepping out and acting out in his marriage. You see, with this belief, the problem is if you are miserable in your marriage, then it won't be very long until you find a way to not be miserable, and you will justify. So this husband who had cheated on his wife with prostitutes, his first justification was it was just sex. And his follow-up justification was, well, I wasn't getting any at home, and Amanda, a man has his needs. He justified it. Why? He wasn't saying, hey, she was... Maybe, Amanda, what could I have done to maybe help her not be so tired? She was tired with the kids and cooking and cleaning and working. It wasn't what could I have done to help her tiredness so that she was more alert and awake when I sought her for sex? In what way could I have been more emotionally intimate with my wife? In what way could I make her more secure emotionally so that way she could then physically want to be intimate with me? No. It was just me. I wasn't getting, and so Amanda, what do you expect? Of course, I'm going to find some way to fulfill my manly needs, was his justification. Another thing that Dr. Shirley Glass points out that makes you more vulnerable to an affair is sexual permissiveness. There was an incredible research. It was done in 1975. And by Red Book. And this study, what they did is they got 100,000 women. That's a whole lot of women. They got 100,000 women, and they saw that 48% of women whose first sexual experience occurred at age 15 or younger were unfaithful. Isn't that interesting? And why is that the case? Not specifically in the studies, but other research has shown that it's that sensitivity thing. It's that numbness kind of thing. It's because something becomes so normal, it becomes part of our beliefs. And it becomes a part of our beliefs, it becomes a part of our behaviors, our lifestyles, our character. And so look at this. 48% of women whose first sexual experience occurred at age 15 or younger were unfaithful. But now look at the huge sort of distinction. Only 16% of women who had their first sexual experience at age 21 or later had been unfaithful. So 48 to 16%. Now, this study didn't include men, but it's also possible that an early sexual permissiveness or experience prior to marriage sort of downplays the impact of infidelity. And again, that's not to say, well, Amanda, I had a sexual experience when I was 15 years old. Well, that's it. I guess there's nothing I could do. I'm just going to shut off this live. I guess I'm just going to just wait around in order to have an affair. Absolutely not. You and I, we do not have to be the victims to our past. We can choose today, right now, to be different. We can choose to break the chains, and we can choose to allow for God to restore and renew anything in us that is broken. And here's the thing, look, I had a young boy telling me, Amanda, he goes, I bring the non-virgins home. This is the boy telling me, young boy, teenage boy. And we're talking about his sexual permissiveness, and I'm telling him it's important that he understands that he's going down a rocky road here, rocky path. And although God is forgiving and merciful and long-suffering, a lot of times we make choices that, as loving as God is, it's not like he can remove all of our consequences, right? It's the young girl who got a sexually transmitted disease after the first time she had sex. So, as loving as God is, and as much as he would want to for this consequence to not happen, God is not going to go against science. The God who created science is not going to go against science. You and I, we are free moral agents, and we will absolutely reap what we sow. Now, because God is loving and good and merciful, he will take our bad choices, and listen, I got a ton of them, and he will somehow, in his creative omnipotence, bring out blessing, yes, even of our poor choices, even out of our dark past. And so this teenage boy, he goes, listen, Amanda, I just mess around with the non-virgins and have sex with them, and I'm just messing around. Oh, but my wife, she's gonna be a virgin, and I'll cheat on my girlfriends, but I'm not gonna cheat on my wife. This is his idea, and I said, listen, buddy, if what you're doing is you're literally creating a pathway in your brain that okays this type of behavior. You can't just turn it on and turn it off. So absolutely, his sexual permissiveness, he might not see it now, but he is going to see that as something becomes more normalized, this personal belief that he has that it's okay to cheat on his girlfriends, on his non-virgin girlfriends, but that it's not going to be okay to cheat, but he's not going to cheat on his virgin wife. It's insane. It's crazy. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work in that way. Now, at the same time, it's not to say because he cheats on his girlfriends that he's automatically going to cheat on his wife. Am I saying that? Absolutely not. But I am saying that it's created more of a vulnerability, and it makes him more susceptible to repeating these behaviors in the future. Another individual factor that makes one more prone, more vulnerable to an affair is a lack of humility. You know, the Bible tells us that pride comes before the fall, while humility inhibits the opportunity for infidelity. What do I mean by that? If someone believes that they would never be unfaithful, it's easier for them to justify putting themselves in high-risk situations. It's kind of like this. Have you ever, don't be so cocky, right? If you are very self-confident, oh, that would never happen to me, and so I can go on a business trip with this really attractive woman or this really attractive man. Nothing's going to happen. I can have late night hours in the office. Nothing is going to happen. Oh, it's just a friend. Oh, it's just drinks. Oh, you start to justify these behaviors because you somehow think you're not susceptible because it's just beneath you, well, you've just now put yourself in a high risk situation, and you have now just made yourself more susceptible. You know, one of my favorite stories, I mention him often, and it's important that I mention Bible stories because I like to learn from history. I think it's important for us to learn from history. I also think that we don't have to make mistakes, that we can learn from the mistakes of others, right? And so in Genesis 39, and I'll tell you more. I feel very privileged to be able to hear people's stories. I feel very privileged to be able to hear, you know, the happiest moments and sometimes the darkest, scariest, most frustrating moments in people's marriages and in their individual lives. And I feel privileged because I can look at a situation and think, how would I have done that differently? Or I can look at that situation and be like, oh, shoot, something like that could have happened to me. But now that this person said it and now that this person mentioned it, I need to be more careful. And so I get to learn from the experiences of others. And so, you know, maybe your job doesn't allow for you to do that, which is why we have the Bible, right? While we hear and listen and read the stories of others, we can learn. We can learn from the mistakes and the successes of others. So in Genesis 39, it's there the story of Joseph. Joseph was the type of person that he was humble. And because of his humility, because he didn't think, oh, that would never happen to me, I truly believe this was a big reason why Joseph had every reason to fall into the trap that Potiphar's wife had set for him. You know, Potiphar's wife had the hots for Joseph. She wanted to sleep with him. She was adamant about it. The Bible tells us that every single day she was just in his ear, in his ear, in his ear. And now in Joseph, the Bible says that he was as one who could not hear. Whenever she would start talking nonsense in his ear, he would just shut her out. He would, imagine that he was in one room cleaning and she went after him, and he would leave the room. If he was out in the fields and she went after him, he would leave the field. He always made sure that he was not alone with this woman. Now, one day, almost as though she planned it, everyone was out of the palace, everyone was out of the house but her and Joseph. And again, she went to attack Joseph. And here's the thing. Joseph could have said, you know what? Look, I've been pretty good this whole time. This woman's been eyeing me for like the longest time, and I haven't slept with her. So, I'm going to keep going about my business, and I'm just going to leave her there. Joseph does not do that. Joseph understands that he's not going to put confidence in himself. He's going to put confidence in his God. And Joseph, he literally, I'm going to read it for you now, he runs for his life. Joseph was humble. He was not proud. He did not think, oh, this is never going to happen to me. No. Joseph says, I don't even want to put myself in a situation where I could be vulnerable to sleeping with my master's wife. And look at what it says. Look. We'll start in verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Verse 8. We're in Genesis 39, verse 8. But he refused and said to the master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has into my hand. He's like, how can I not be loyal and faithful to the guy who has given me everything? There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, and rightfully so, because you are his wife. And then, to me, this was the secret. Joseph, and we're going to see this in just a few here, Joseph had high moral value. Look at why Joseph says, I can't do this. And this is why he says, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Now, reason with me here. If Joseph had slept with her, no one was going to find out. You know why? Because A, the woman would have never told her husband because he would have killed both of them. Okay. B, there was no one in the house. The only person who would have seen was God. Joseph lived for an audience of one. And so if the mindset is I can cheat on my spouse because no one will find out, you're more likely to cheat on your spouse. But if the mindset is God sees all things and knows all things, and how could I do this great wickedness not only towards my spouse, but even first and foremost against my God? Do you see how the dynamic changes? Well, long story short, he tells her, he once again affirms his belief. And his belief is that he's going to be a man of integrity, that he's going to live for an audience of one, that it doesn't matter if the master finds out or doesn't find out. He's not concerned about the master. He's concerned about being faithful to the living God. And so the Bible says that Joseph, look at verse 11, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. I translate by, he ran for his life, because Joseph was not secure in his ability. She was hot. She was good looking. He was as a man gets, right? He could have justified. He could have excused himself. A man has his needs. This woman is coming around. What does Potiphar expect with his loose wife coming around? No. There's no excuses. There's no justification. Joseph simply runs for his life because he is not going to put himself in a high-risk situation and sit around and think, will I fall into temptation? Will I not fall into temptation? Well, Joseph didn't even wait to find out. He ran. And that's what you and I need to do. You see, another thing that will help you become less vulnerable to an affair is a strong conscience. This can inhibit you from taking part in an affair. But here's the thing. Feelings of guilt after the affair is not as helpful as feelings of guilt prior to an affair. We need to be able to avoid a crisis. What do I mean by that? Joseph reasoned with himself that this was not going to end well. Remember, he lived for an audience of one. He says, how could I do this great wickedness before God? So his conscience took place before the event happened, which is why the event never happened. Now remember King David, the one who slept with one of his soldiers' wife, Bathsheba? Well, the guilt, it set in after the fact, after the crisis. So we need to make sure that our conscience kicks in before the event and not after the event, which is why it's important that we know what are the principles that we live by. One of the activities, one of the exercises that I like to do with my couples is that we figure out the mission statement for their marriage and the mission statement for their individual lives. And mission statements, they're so important because they become the compass of how you will live your life. So I had a client recently tell me, I said, hey, what are the principles of your life? What are the things you stand for? What are the things that you need in a partner, in a friendship? And she goes, well, I really value loyalty and honesty. And then she said something interesting. She goes, but I value loyalty more than honesty. And I said, well, what do you mean? Explain yourself. And she goes, so I am honest, sure, and I value it, but I will lie in order to be loyal to someone. So do you see how our principles, our beliefs will play out in the way we behave? And she went on to share a story how she lied, so she wasn't honest. Why? Because loyalty for her triumphed honesty. Very interesting. And so I want you to keep in mind that your moral compass, what you believe in, is more powerful than, and I'm going to be cautious with how I say this. Your beliefs need to be your beliefs and not your parents' beliefs or your church's belief. And here's why I mean that. At times, you and I, we are more focused on behavior modification than on heart transformation. Let's take River and Reed, for example. River and Reed are my twin boys. What I don't want them to do is to have a tantrum in the aisle of Target, okay? Because I would be embarrassed by that, right? And parents would. And so oftentimes parents, because they are embarrassed, they have a strong reaction. They spank or manipulate or put the fear of God. You know, I hear parents say, I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to call 911 on you, right? Get up and sort of threaten. That's behavior modification. In the moment, your kid might very well stand up because he's scared out of his mind of all of your manipulation, your control, your fear tactics. But behavior modification doesn't necessarily mean heart transformation. Behavior modification gives you immediate results. But unlike heart transformation, it's not long lasting. And what happens is that rules without relationship will always lead to rebellion. And so if you're more concerned about the rules instead of forming a relationship, surely there's either going to be an external rebellion or an internal rebellion. And so moral values are a compass. These are not things like, well, my mom said so, and I'm going because my dad said so, but we need to believe it for ourselves. But of course, we need to pay attention to the age, right? So River and Reed, they brush their teeth right now, not because heart transformation took place. They can't reason with you, well, I brush my teeth because I don't want cavities and because I don't want the doctor to have to pull out my teeth, and it's important because I want to be hygienic. They're not going to articulate that. So right now, it's absolutely a behavior modification. However, if it stays a behavior modification their whole lives, there's a problem. Soon they're going to have a heart transformation which says, hey, I understood the why, and so I behave as a consequence of that. And so your why needs to start from the inside out. Heart transformation needs to take place within you, because here's the thing. Fear, control, and manipulation, which I've already said before, these are tactics from the kingdom of Satan. God operates with truth and love. God is after your heart. He's not after your behavior modifications, because he knows if he comes after your heart that his love will constrain you. I want River and Reed, I want my boys to do the right thing, not because I'm watching and they're scared that I'm going to spank them or hit them, okay? Not because of that. I want River and Reed to do the right thing because they know that the right thing is the right thing to do, because of a heart transformation. Does that make sense? Was that clear? And here's the thing. When you do the right thing simply because someone else is watching, or because you're scared of what your mom and dad are going to think, or to be exposed, then it becomes easier for you to do things in secret, right? As long as no one else catches you doing it. So one of the examples that I like in the Bible is found in Daniel. If you go there to Daniel, Daniel chapter 3, it's the story there of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these are young boys, young teenage boys. They've been exiled. They've been taken away from their family. And so you would think that these boys, they had reason to excuse or to justify their actions. They could have thought, listen, I'm away from my mom and dad. They're not going to find out what I'm doing here because we're thousands and thousands of miles apart. We don't know how long we're going to stay here. So quite honestly, we can do whatever we want. But here's the thing. Their parents' gods were not only the God of their parents, but their God became their God. And so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because they were unwilling to bow down to the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had built, King Nebuchadnezzar threatened that he was going to throw them into the fiery furnace. And here's the difference between behavior modification and heart transformation. If they only did the right thing because mommy and daddy are watching, you better believe that they would have been like, okay, we'll bow down to this golden statue, like we don't want to get burned, right? But because theirs was a heart transformation, because they had their why, because their God wasn't just the God of their parents, it was their God. It's the reason why 3 young teenage boys walked into a fiery furnace telling the king, we know that God can rescue us from here. But even if he does not, we are so devoted to him and we are so in love with him that it doesn't matter what happens right now, we will not bow down to the golden statue. And that is what I want for River and Reed. And that is what I want for my husband. You know, at times after affairs have taken place, cheating has taken place, husbands and wives, whoever is the hurt spouse, they start acting like Sherlock Holmes. Understandably so. They become detectives. They want to look at the phones and look at the computers. And there is a time for that, absolutely, because, you know, their trust have been broken. But can you imagine if for the rest of your life you had to live in such a way that you had to monitor your husband and your wife to make sure that they didn't get a divorce? That's not a way to live. We want to make sure that heart transformation is taking place, not merely behavior modification. Behavior modification is not powerful enough to keep you from having an affair. We need to experience heart transformation. We need to be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I wrote here, devotion to one's spouse serves as a powerful inhibitor to someone having an affair. Negative consequences, on the other hand, provide little motivation for faithfulness. Devotion, heart transformation over negative consequences, fear, control, manipulation. And that's what God wants of us. God doesn't want to, put the fear of God in us. He wants to allow us in our freedom and in our choice that, hey, I have the choice and I choose to love you. I want Renee to be married to me, not because he has to, but because he wants to. I want Renee to be married to me, not because he's scared or manipulated or controlled, but out of truth and love. And so here's the next thing that make you more susceptible. Individual factors that make you more susceptible to an affair. People with low self-esteem tend to be more vulnerable. And why? Dr. Shirley Glass says that spouses are more like magnifying mirrors and affair partners are more like vanity mirrors. Affair partners typically affirm you. They build up your ego. Think about it. They only see the best and the greatest, right? Affair partners are much like your Instagram reels. You're not going to take pictures of Instagram, when you're stressed out, when you just got fired, when your spouse cheated. No, you're going to take the best. You're going to choose cautiously and wisely all of the perfect family photos and all of the perfect photos of your kids, right? I'm showing videos there where River and Reed are actually getting along, while the other half of the time they're actually fighting with each other, right? So people put the good stuff on there. Well, this is very much why those with low self-esteem, they get an ego boost in their affair. So if this is you, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, I have low self-esteem, does this make, I'm not saying that you are going to have an affair because you have low self-esteem, but this is something to be mindful of. This is something to be cautious about. This is something to work on individually. So in no way, shape, or form will it affect your marriage. The next one here is a big one. It's boredom. Boredom makes you more vulnerable. And boredom is honestly, to me, a choice. Okay? Boredom isn't created by life circumstances. Boredom is a result from your lack of motivation. I told Renee, if River and Reed ever tell me that they're bored, I'm going to say, are you guys kidding me? You and I, there's an art to boredom. I remember, and I'm not even that old. I'm 28 years old. And I remember car trips. And car trips, we would just look out the window because we didn't have cell phones. Oh my goodness. Teenagers these days, we have such a hard time just doing nothing. Doing nothing is like so straining, right? We always have to be doing something. No one just sits in the car and looks out the window anymore. I was having a conversation with my friend the other day. No one just sits in the car and looks out the window, looks out the view. Everyone is on their phone or watching a movie. They need to be doing something. Boredom makes you more vulnerable. A lot of my guys will say, with pornography, there are two reasons why men start watching pornography. Whether it's either curiosity or boredom. Curiosity or boredom. I had one husband who told me that there was, I think it was like hurricane season or something, and he was so bored, stuck in the house with nothing to do, and that he would just go into his bathroom and just watch pornography just because he was just bored, right? So we need to make sure that we are doing something, that we are engaging our brains, that we are living out our purpose, that we are being passionate. And if you are bored, it's because you're choosing to be bored, right? It's a lack of motivational. So let's figure out the why this boredom. Another thing is adrenaline junkies. Those tend to be more susceptible to an affair because they just want the next high. They want the next best and the greatest and the latest. Recently, one of the couples that I worked on was absolutely that. He lived for the big moments. And as soon as he got stuck in a marriage with just the everyday things, the washing dishes, the cleaning up after the kids, he just, I need to do something. I need more. Adrenaline junkies. Another thing is those with addictive personalities. Addictive personalities make you more vulnerable to an affair. And why? Well, because you're looking for, let's say, the next high. And I don't just mean drugs, okay? Addictive personality in all its way, whether you're addicted to working out, you're addicted to your job. And falling in love is a very powerful high. Okay, so if you have addictive personality, you can see why falling in love would be very compelling, would be very calling. there's an interesting article. I'm not going to have time to break it down with you here in this live. Renee just showed me my time. I got 20 minutes to go. It's called, you can put it there on Google. I suggest that you read it. It's called Why Falling in Love Gives You Butterflies. And it's written by a woman named Nicole Spector, and she interviews different neuroscientists, psychologists, psychiatrists to understand the butterfly effect in your stomach. So I'm going to recap it quickly here, summarize it for you. But the whole thing is, when you fall in love, and I'm sure you've experienced it before, the butterflies in your stomach. And she was trying to figure out exactly what that was. And so one scientist by the name of Dr. Nicole Pross, she said this: one of the challenges that scientists face is that a lot of these physical symptoms are really consistent with sexual arousal and response. She's saying this: look, the butterflies in your stomach, while you might believe that it's, oh, I'm so in love, she goes, actually, it's a sexual arousal. Look at what she says. I think people want to hear it's a higher calling or something like that, but the kinds of body changes in an early stage crush or infatuation look very much like someone easily sexually aroused. I love his stuff. If you get a chance, check his stuff out. He recently wrote a book, A Cure for Mental Illness, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but his name is Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, author, and he says that he agrees that these bodily symptoms point more to lust than love. So let's take the adrenaline junkie, right? He's getting butterflies. He sees someone attractive and he's thinking, oh, butterflies in my stomach, that means act on it. But really, this is not a love thing. This is a lust thing. And this is why it's important that when we know these things, when we have the butterflies in the stomach, this is not like, oh, look, God sent me. I'm so out of love with my wife. And look, I'm so in love with this woman or this man because of the butterflies in my stomach. No. That's not love. That's infatuation. That's not love, the 1 Corinthians 13 kind of love. That is lust. Okay, and we need to know the difference. Look, they continue in saying this: falling in love, or rather falling in lust, because that's what it is. It's not falling in love, activates those pleasure centers, which causes an immediate psychological response. So the heartbeat, the sweaty hands, right? The heart beating faster. And look at what happens. Falling in love is very much like a drug. And that's what this article will say. Dopamine is released. Norepinephrine is released. Oxytocin takes a little while because it's our cuddle hormone, right? It takes a little while because it's when we start feeling comfortable to the person. But look at all of these powerful hormones that are released. And so we might very well get confused that this is love when really it's lust. And so, but look at, amazingly enough, so I had a husband, the same situation. Well, how are you going to tell me that I'm not in love because I'm having all these butterflies and I'm sweating and my heart beats? And when I look at my wife, I don't feel that way. When I look at my wife, there is not one flutter. There is not one fluttering of my stomach. So I will tell you this. I'm looking at Renee right now. Butterflies are not going on. Okay. I know Renee said that's rude, but here's the thing. It's not rude. It's actually incredible. And here's why. We get disillusioned that butterflies in stomach means this whole thing, and it doesn't. I don't want to be experiencing butterflies in my stomach at this point in my marriage, and here's why. Now, I'm not saying I don't always get butterflies, right? When Renee dresses up in a nice suit and we're going to a wedding or something, I'm like, woo, right? That is my baby's daddy, and he is looking good, okay? I'm not saying that there's never butterflies in the stomach, but I'm not saying that it's as it was in the beginning of our relationship. But look at how amazing this is. Do not get disillusioned with this butterfly in your stomach nonsense. Dr. Nicole Gravagana, I'm probably saying her name wrong, neuroscientist, behavior specialist, suggests that these calm, jitter-free waters are a good sign. So look at that, Renee, not rude. It's a good sign. Look, true love is a well-being experience that does not include nervousness or excitement. Rather, true love does not resemble addiction in the body. Okay, mature love is not like an addiction to the body. It's not the butterflies. It's not the adrenaline junkie kind of stuff. Look, Dr. Carroll adds that around 5-year relationship marker, and Renee and I, what are we on right now?
6.
We're 6. No, I think we're 7.
No, 6.
We're 6 years of marriage. I think he's wrong, but okay, we'll go with him. He's more of the numbers guy. So 6 years of marriage. See, he was wrong. 7 years of marriage? Look at that. Oh, look at me. I was right, and he's the math guy. So look at this. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of dating. Okay, we are way past the 5-year relationship marker. Look at what she says. Dopamine and endorphins drop to only mildly elevated levels compared to the pre-relationship level. She says, yes, it makes sense. It's normal. And so the real work of true love begins. Not an immature, not a lust, not an infatuation, but mature, true love begins. It's not as breathlessly exciting as the butterflies, but it's much more fulfilling and certainly a lot less stressful. There's a consistency, there's a stability, there's a steadfastness to this mature love. Oh, I love that. Another individual factor, and this is the last one before I give you the quiz. We are good. We're on 13 minutes. I'm doing good on time. This one, I wish, again, if this is you, I would urge you to get professional help, to get a Christian therapist, to take some time. I would encourage you to do the Abundant Marriage Program. You know, our 84-day course takes you from start to finish, from mediocre to abundant marriage. Not only do we look at the 5 different pillars, the C's that I've mentioned before, you know, character, commitment, compromise, compassion, to name a few, we also work individually because, of course, we want to make sure that you are well as you relate with your spouse. So look, personal baggage is something that makes you vulnerable to an affair. Now, personal baggage, who doesn't have it? All of us have personal baggage, but these you need to spend a little bit more time on, and you need to work through them as everyone needs to work through theirs. So past childhood sexual abuse can create vulnerability. You know why? Because abuse can leave a person feeling dirty, unworthy, and if they enter the marriage with negative attitudes about sex or about themselves, their motivation in responding to their spouse's initiation or want of sex will likely be driven by desire to do the right thing instead of the want to do. So here's the thing. I recently had a wife come. We did a live, and it was called 7 Tips for Better Sex. 7 Tips for Better Sex. And there I talked about the way God views sex. And this wife was like, man, sex to me was something dirty. But the way you talked about how it was God made and God designed and God given, it completely changed my mindset. And so if abuse has taken place, the relationship you have with sex, healing needs to take place. Does that make sense? Healing needs to take place. And absolutely it will affect a wife that I'm working with who was abused by multiple men in her past. She absolutely says, Amanda, these experiences affect my sexual life in my marriage. How would it not? Okay, so as those things heal, and make sure that not only are you safeguarded, sure, from being vulnerable to an affair, but also we want to make sure that you are having an abundant marriage. The next thing, infidelity if it runs into your family, right? I like what Richard Rose says. He says this: pain that's not transformed will be transmitted. And so you and I, we are responsible for the integrity of our DNA. Listen closely. DNA is not destiny. You do not have to repeat the mistakes from your parents or your great parents or your great grandparents. You don't have to do it. So we need to make sure that pain is transformed and not transmitted. And finally, intimacy impairment, whether it's physical or emotional, whether physically there's something physically wrong with, whether it's the shape of the vagina, the shape of the penis, or maybe pain that you're experiencing during intercourse, whatever that may be, those things need to absolutely be figured out. And also emotional intimacy. Women tend to have, research shows, more of an emotional high IQ than men do. But there are also ways that men can increase emotional IQ, and we've done a video about that also. So look, there are a ton more individual factors that make you susceptible to an affair. Remember, we're not talking about bulletproofing your marriage from an affair. We're talking about bulletproofing you but consequently, then we bulletproof your marriage, right? So look, there are more individual factors. For example, narcissism is a huge one that can make you susceptible to an affair. Life transitions. If remember last week we talked about a child-centered marriage. If mom and dad are just feeding into the child, and they're neglecting their subsystem, their husband and wife subsystem, of course it's going to make you more vulnerable. So life transitions, a new baby, and then teenagers or whatever going off to college, life transitions make you vulnerable. So you need to keep checking in with each other. Another thing, interesting research, death of a parent makes you more vulnerable, more susceptible. So very interesting things. Renee even looked like, really? Yeah, interesting stuff. So I wanted to give you some information to get you started, to get your mind, rolling and working. And if you have a specific question, you want us to go a little bit more in depth, by all means, send in your comments. This is just a general idea, okay? Now, again, none of the things that I talked about or even listed here in the end is an excuse or a justification for an affair. There are people in your situation or even worse situation who have not had an affair. That being said, the future safety of your marriage requires that both husband and wife become aware of their vulnerabilities and then do whatever is necessary to make sure that cheating does not take place in your marriage. Having monogamous marriage requires that both people take responsibility, that both people make sure that they're putting a mirror in their blind spots, and that they make sure that they are doing absolutely whatever it takes. And if you're here right now, I want to congratulate you. Awesome. You are taking one step to getting information so that you can apply to getting knowledge. The Bible says a people with no vision perish. The Bible also says this, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And this is what we're doing. We're putting knowledge, and then we are going to do what? We're going to make sure that this knowledge isn't just heard, but it's done in our marriage. And so Renee, now is the time. Renee's going to put the link there for you to take the quiz. This is the individual vulnerability quiz by Dr. Shirley Glass. There's just a few questions. Take it separately. If you need a third party to work it out with, you guys do. But again, don't look at your wife's answers or your husband. Oh my goodness, our marriage is doomed. Look at this. It says that you're a high risk. Again, this is not an excuse or a justification. The whole point of this is to make you aware so that you can start working on these 3 factors. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. I'm looking forward to your input, to your questions. And hey, I've been getting some cardboard dreams. So please, if you know what I'm talking about, we last 2 weekends ago, I think, Renee, 2 weeks ago, we did. It's still on the Instagram. It's still on the Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube pretty soon. It's called Cardboard Dreams. And so if you've done your cardboard dreams, please share it. Send it in a direct message to me or send it to the email. I would love to see your cardboard dreams. Again, we're a family. So I'll see you guys next week, Thursday, 8:30 p.m. See you later.